Hey, everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George-Affleck.
And we can talk tariffs, we can talk BC budget, we can talk politics on the federal scale, more upheaval on the provincial scale. Oh my gosh, George, it must be time for
UnSpun. Nothing to talk about here.
No notes.
I mean, wow. What a week.
Girl!
What a day. What a 24 hours. Tariffs? No
I'm
tariffs?
filling
Tariffs?
in
No
on
tariffs?
radio this week, brother.
Yeah. Fire hose of
I feel like
information.
I've been running a marathon. I really do. And every single second, everything shifts and changes. In particular, with regard to the tariffs that Donald Trump has unprovoked thrown at Canada and Mexico and to China as well. That was only Tuesday. It's Thursday.
So as of this moment, we don't have tariffs, which came at 15 minutes after you finished your show on the CKNW today. 9 minutes, was it after the show, was it? Or something like that?
3 minutes.
Mm.
3 minutes after 12 noon. It just
Right.
moved on. I was like, wow, okay. Because we had been, sliding down the razor blade of life that is this new U.S. presidency. That was a saying that my stepdad always used to use. It's unbelievable. Like by the time we post this podcast, it will be outdated. That's how
Yeah.
crazy it is. Like we had, as of this morning, it was 25% tariffs. Mexico and Canada halfway through the show. We understood that Justin Trudeau had a conversation, a 50-minute conversation with President Trump yesterday. It was heated, and what was the other word?
Full
It was
of cuss words.
Well, it was heated yet fruitful, or so, I don't even know. I've lost track. But
Was
then
it though?
halfway through, but that's just it, because then it was like Mexico. It's all about fentanyl, but Mexico gets a pause, and then hours later, Canada. I think it's very personal between Donald Trump and Justin Trudeau, like very personal. And I don't know. You speak to what this is all about fentanyl, right, George?
Oh. No, we all know that. That's a legal reason. I honestly, because I think actually when you started your show, there was the auto guys were going to get a reprieve for a month. That was when you
That's
started the
right.
show. But at the end of the
Yes,
show, just after it, at noon, it was
everything's
all
on
of us were
pause.
getting a reprieve. So nobody was going to pay the tariff. I mean, I don't even understand how this can be functional in any capacity, not only for them, but for us, because we turn the switch on and off. How does this even work operationally? You just go on, off, on. Is there like a switch in some place in Canada and the US where you can turn tariffs on and off?
No, but it plunks the market, and then you buy on the dip, and then it comes up, and then you plunk it again. It's like it's
What?
playing with people's lives and livelihoods, and it's stressing out people across the globe. Like it's unbelievable. And going back to what the leaders are saying and doing here in Canada, like there's something we can focus on, because what we've learned about the U.S. president is there is absolutely nothing we can take for face value or trust.
Yeah.
There's just zero. And when we're looking around to our fellow human beings who are our closest neighbor and ally,
Mhm.
no one's really standing up for us. Except for Mike Myers on Saturday Night Live. Like, thanks, Mike. I'm glad you're down there doing it, wearing Canada's not for
And
sale
Tom
and saying
Green.
elbows up.
Tom Green too.
Oh, Tom Green. I'm not saying he's the only one
No,
to
no,
do
but I
it,
mean, yeah,
but
there's a few big
okay.
people.
I'd like
Yeah,
there to be
all of them.
swaths of nameless,
All the
faceless,
lions.
non-celebrity human beings, especially the elected officials, standing in the streets saying, stop this madness. It's crazy.
The,
So
the
one of the
next the
things,
next leader of the NDP, Charlie Angus, of course, I would say is the most vocal. I'm calling him the next leader because I think he will be the next leader of the NDP after this election. Because there's got to be a leadership race when they lose badly, the NDP. So, yeah, there are a few voices out there, but you do feel like we're united, except for, some people in the prairies and some people in the BC. I think there are, we see them, we get our DMs, we get our responses in our, people calling us, lefties, things like that. I love when I get called a lefty.
That's wild that you're being called a lefty. Where I was going with my rant about Americans not standing up for Canadians was what outgoing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said in his very impactful. I wish I saw more Justin Trudeau that I saw, what was it, day before yesterday when he addressed the incoming tariffs. Like he actually looked like a leader that was helpful when he was like, and now I'm going to speak to the American people. And now I'm going to speak directly to one person. And he said, and I quote, Donald, we have done big things. We have signed an historic deal leading to record growth, big things on the world stage, as we have done for generation. We should be working together. And he says, I rarely agree with the Wall Street Journal. And you're a very smart guy, but this is a very dumb thing to do.
I don't get the dig on the Wall Street Journal on that one, but
I don't know.
I don't know where you're going with that. Because you're just feeding into
Mostly
that
I was
narrative
talking
of
about
not
Trudeau, but
trusting
sure,
media.
we can sparkly thing.
Yeah, I know, but
okay.
it's just like don't feed into the non-trusting of media, like please. But yeah, no, he's certainly stepped up. He has no holds bar, like he can do anything he wants right now, because he's leaving. So it's actually quite ideal, even though everybody's complaining that the house should be back and all this stuff. I'm like, no, this is actually quite good because he's liberated to do whatever he wants, which is how he speaks for most of us as Canadians. And next week when we have a new leader, or whatever, 2 weeks or whatever the process is, because the new leader of the Liberal Party will decide when they want to become leader, how long that process will take. Contrary to what Donald Trump says, saying that Justin Trudeau is not leaving. The way
He's
it
trying to
works,
hold on to
everybody,
power. It's like, I
it's
don't think
it's
you understand
it's a
how it works.
process. The new
It's a
leader
process.
decides, I need 2 weeks, I need 1 week, I need 4 weeks, whatever you need, buddy.
Yeah.
And then they call the next house sitting. So I don't know. I mean, you know what this is ultimately right now? It just seems, talk about, our show's called UnSpun. This is all about spin. This is like,
All of
there's
it.
absolutely nothing about good policy here. It's craziness. To what end? To what end? I just
Yeah.
can't figure it out. Creating chaos, which doesn't seem particularly positive for the most part for America. So unless you believe all the Russian spy stuff,
I
which
think he gets a
becomes
kick out of it. I think he's just an absolute,
nut
total,
bar.
utter narcissist
Yeah.
who just, if everybody's talking about him, he's winning. And I guess the people around him don't really care about what's left behind for their children and grandchildren, because what this is stoking is ultimately going to become some dystopian nightmare, because everybody's going to be every man for themselves or whatever, unless you're Canadian. Because that's the one silver lining here, George. And we talked a lot about upside down Canadian flags and them being a symbol, our flag being a symbol of something negative. Just in this last couple of weeks, Canadians of all walks largely have pulled together against a common foe. And I think it's really interesting looking at premiers, with the exception of a couple.
Mhm.
But I was impressed with our premier here, David-Eby, today, using his frank talk, getting himself into the news cycle by just simply saying Canadians are pissed off. I think we are. I think we are pissed off. I think having Doug Ford, newly reelected Ontario Premier Doug Ford, literally saying, I don't care if we're on pause or whatever, I'm still turning the lights off on Monday, because we're not doing this. We're not doing the back and forth. We're not doing the hold us by our short and curlies. Bad saying, but you know what I mean?
It's interesting to see how little Pierre-Poilievre is resonating. He doesn't read, he's not reading the room. He did his 5 point plan speech this week as well. He got very little pickup. It might be the greatest plan in the world, but that's not the tone we want right now. We want outrage. We want Doug Ford. We want the way Trudeau is talking.
Solidarity.
We
Yeah.
want we want you to say, we want you to be angry. We don't want you to be, this is not the time for pragmatism. This is the time
This is
for
also
like
not the time to tell
thumping
us
your
that
fist and
can
saying, this is not right. That's what we're looking for. And so it's
Canada's not
interesting to
broken.
watch Pierre Poilievre, you know, being challenged by this, trying to be this kind of different character that's not fitting in.
Polyev has campaigned on Canada being broken
Hmm.
by fill in the blank number of years of Trudeau, fill in the blank number of years, whatever. We're broken. It's busted. I have to fix it. It's irreparable if I don't do it. To say we're broken in this moment is unhelpful to us on a world stage. And that is, I think, resonating with people of all political stripe. I'm impressed to hear, around dinner tables of largely staunch conservatives saying, I don't like what I'm hearing from Pierre Poilievre. It surprises me.
I don't hear that. I just hear that we don't hear anything. He's not even part of the conversation, and that's worse for a
Yeah, well, I'm just
politician.
saying they're pissed at him. So I don't know if you're hearing me today, but that's, I was agreeing with you.
Right. Yeah, no, but I think that he's just not resonating. So it's
Right.
interesting, here's a guy who has 40% up in the polls and he's just not reading the room. He's not reading the room. Doug Ford read the room, won a massive majority.
Yeah.
That's how you do it.
He's
So
not up 40% in the polls anymore.
yeah, well, and yeah, now we'll see what happens this with the new leadership, and we'll see what happens there. But it's definitely bizarre times, and I don't even know like that whatever that was on Tuesday night in America. Like I watched about an hour of it, and I'm like, okay, I've had enough of this. There's nothing happening here. Because we were expecting he was going to remove America from NATO or something. He got big announcement, big announcement. There was no big announcement. It was a pat on his own back for hours, for whatever it was.
99 minutes and 10
Yeah,
seconds
that's
was
about,
what I've heard. I watched some of it and I just found it to be more of the same. It felt like one of his rallies. Like
yeah.
and with just the
Hmm.
watching Jody Vance and the speaker behind him is just, it's always just so theatrical anyway, no matter who's doing it. But with the heckling bit, because I recall Biden's State of the Union when there were hecklers on the GOP side of the floor. Nobody got kicked out. So it was really interesting to see the snowflake nature of the current administration that they felt the need to remove an elected official from the people's house by force with the sergeant at arms, like within minutes of a disruption of any kind. It showed thin skin for sure.
Showed the end
But
of democracy.
there's all kinds of, like I said, by the time we even publish this podcast, we're going to be behind because there's Supreme Court rulings going on, and there's a shift now with Doge, with Elon Musk slashing and burning. They're going to get rid of the Department of Education. They're pulling back on they're putting pause on all help for Ukraine, which is undeniable flipping of policy. And they've just discovered today, I think it was Rand Paul told the president today that he could codify Doge into law with only 51 votes. They don't need one Democratic vote. So we're about to see just how far the Republicans have fallen if they are willing to go, yeah, this unelected official should be his way or the highway for
They also have to vote on a budget, which on the Republicans don't have the votes to vote for this
no.
budget. So that leaves it to the Democrats to support this budget. It's crazy.
Or they go off a fiscal cliff.
Yes. So how does
So
that
what do
work?
we think happens there? Like that?
I mean, yeah, it's a horrible catch-22 nightmare because if they don't vote for it and they don't pass it, then all those employees, I mean, it's almost intentional to push them
Yeah, no one
into,
gets paid.
you'll save a fortune in salaries for the several months that government might not be operating at all. It's the ultimate doge. So, I think the Democrats a few of them, enough of them will take a bullet and support it just and have their arguments. Some of the fiscal conservative Democrats will support it, reluctantly.
I wonder what they'll try and bury in that legislation, which is always the thing, right? That was the
Mhm.
argument that the last time, which was not that long ago, that we all felt our noses up, puppied up onto the window of fiscal cliff, nightmare. It's like, well, no, these Democrats have put in some things that we don't agree with. And that's why it went down to the 11th hour and almost didn't pass, and then ultimately did. It's going to be very, yeah,
Well, that's okay. We got a nice
stressful,
budget
more
in
stressful.
BC,
Oh
10
my God.
billion,
Okay. Do you want to shift
maybe.
to that? Because what did you see there? You're fiscally,
An out-of-date budget. That's what I saw.
yeah.
I think, no restraint in any areas that's possible. Uh, it was done before all this chaos began. So it's really out of date. It's probably $5 billion more debt than they're saying. The deficit's going to be bigger unless they decide to do some other things. So, it's we have to start planning for how do we not pay for government employees, maybe, or not pay for a lot of government services and pay for grants for small businesses. Just that the money needs to go. If we do tariffs, how does that money get distributed, and how do the provinces get involved in that process to keep our economy alive? Is the ultimate question. I tweeted out a couple of days ago. Maybe it's time we looked at the Airbnb bylaw and said, you know what? If you go to Summerland right now, you can't rent. You can nobody. All the homes are for sale. Nobody's allowed to do Airbnb, and there's an empty homes tax of $60,000 a year for some of those homes that if they live in Vancouver and they have a house up there. Surprisingly, the Gulf Islands doesn't have this. Oh, where are all the NDP's little cottages? Anyways, so a place like Summerland, which is being devastated as already, here's a way to solve that with all the Canadians who are going to want to travel in Canada this year. Loosen up those regulations right now so that we can allow uh, small towns across Canada at least prosper on the tourism side, and for people to be able to afford to keep their homes or whatever. It's not working. It hasn't led to any more rental units in Summerland or Penticton. It's not that I've spoken about this before, and this whole argument, but we have to start looking at any kind of policy that seems to be based on other assumptions that now seem ancient news. And this is one of the provincial barriers, right? We're hearing a lot about that, like tear these down. We're hearing PEI says no, we don't want to do it. It's going to ruin all our businesses will go out of business. Will be, everything will be imported and we'll lose everything. To BC is going, well, why not? Or in Ontario, let's do it. Quebec, let's do it. So there are many policies that we need to act quickly on that exist in our country in order to keep the economy stimulated, no matter what this idiot for a president decides to do today, tomorrow, and the next day. This tweet that I just retweeted was, okay, tariff on, tariff off, tariff on, tariff off, and then golf. That's the weekly Donald Trump schedule. It's insanity, and we have to kind of go, you know what? Whatever. Let's focus on our own country, our own province, our own towns. What's Vancouver doing for this? What is going on? How are we going to assume the economy is going into the shitter? Because it is. So we need to find solutions, which means we need to look at policies for government first to see what could be extracted. And then we have to look at grant programs to keep everybody going for the next at least 4 years, if not longer, maybe 8 to 12. I don't know. We don't know how long this is going to go on, maybe forever if these tariffs finally stick.
I think coverage that I've been involved with the BC budget, the fact that education is barely propped up, that's a concern for me. Healthcare is a no-brainer. Our healthcare system is completely plunked right now. I'm way more worried about healthcare services and emergency rooms closing than I am Summerland Airbnb. Sorry, Summerland. I do agree that if one area is going to be on lock for not being able to have short-term rentals, then it should be everywhere. And I mean everywhere. I mean Whistler. I mean everywhere, right? Like, let's do it or let's not do it. I get that. But the provincial barrier bit, I think, is outdated and archaic, and I think there are ways to do it. So the obvious, this entire economy is going to crash if we do it for this small island province. We can make some concessions as a country to make sure that there are certain things that work for various jurisdictions that aren't as robust as perhaps a BC or an Ontario or an Alberta or whatever. Like, pick your big spots. But the fact that we're the bureaucracy and infrastructure alone in it. I mean, closing down my personal corp, I'm Jody Vance Corporation, Vance Inc. or It's a Given Productions, I think it was, when I was living in Ontario. It cost me $15,000 to move my company to here. My company that is just me, from one province to the other.
Wow.
How is that helping small business, right? I had to sell everything that my company had ever bought, pay taxes on everything it ever bought, move here and rebuy it all back. And it was just like that alone would stop you from doing such things. It's like,
yeah.
So what you're saying about helping businesses, helping the private sector, help the public sector would be good, but within reason, where we don't, destroy some of the strong pillars of what make us unique in Canada. And
100%. And government employees spend money. That's one of the weird things with Doge and all that. These are affluent people that they're getting rid of in communities across the United States. Victoria is very prosperous because there's so many bureaucrats there. And is there too many bureaucrats? I don't know. Is this the time to be thinking about that? No, let's be looking at how do we stimulate things
Right.
not destimulate things. So sometimes you go, government employees, fine. Like that's the last thing I would, be saying a couple of years ago. That's not our priority right now. Our priority is
Yeah.
ensuring that the bureaucracy in its legislation, like you say, with interprovincial, whatever stuff, loosen things up. Let's get going here. Let's be self-sustaining, like Canada first. Boy. I mean, that kind of mentality, which is kind of what Poilievre was saying in his 5-point plan. But snooze fest, but it is that we have to start looking at these things and get them done and as fast as possible because the assumption this guy's there for the next 4 years or longer. So we need to assume that that's the case and operate with that assumption. And governments need to move faster. It's great to be screaming and yelling right now, but what we've learned in this 1 week is we can't predict at all this guy in the States. So ignore, move on, and just okay, you're tariffs on tariffs, whatever that's magical switch that exists, fine. But in the meantime, we're working without you now, buddy. We're done.
Right. Keep calm, carry on. There's really no space for partisan political infighting. So our political landscape is changing and shifting, and the polling is showing that in a very, very big way. It's undeniable, and it's literally, last days of Justin Trudeau right now, and it's very much leaning. Who knows? It could be Chrystia
Yeah,
Freeland or Mark Carney.
campaigns
We don't
matter.
know. We don't know.
Campaigns matter.
Right. But here we go to figure out who the Liberal leader or the next prime minister will be, because ultimately that person will be prime minister for the period of time until an election is called.
Mm-hmm.
And then here we go. You predict May that we're going to the polls, right?
We'll have a new leader of the Liberal Party. I think they'll move fast because that momentum that they have right now, they want to capitalize on that.
Oh, for sure. So that means May,
I think so, mid-May. Yeah.
mid-May. So that, yeah. I mean, that's better than, I shouldn't say this, but I say this about Ontario, knowing that everybody's jealous about our crocuses and daffodils coming up, but Doug Ford ran an election or a campaign and held an election in Ontario during some of the worst snowstorms in
And
recent
during the
memory.
chaos, right? And
Yeah.
during all this craziness. So
And
it's
during all this
I mean,
craziness. Yeah.
there was a story today that does concern me about the Chinese and Russian infiltration. I'm not sure if you might have seen that in Disinformation that they're working on, and it does concern me because it clearly people fall for it. I think I brought this up last week. Take a
Yeah.
look at anybody who's on social media. When you see somebody, that you've not seen before, take a look at when their account was created. And if it
I
was
do that
created in the
because of you.
last six
Yeah.
months, within the last 6 months, they're not a real person. They are a bot from Russia or China. Do not believe what they're saying, especially if it's anti-government and anti-this. I can guarantee you those people are not real.
Right.
Elon Musk has no interest in stopping those people because they are supportive of his agenda. And so, and it's penetrating into Canada. We see these people trumpeting Trump, and
Yeah.
trumpeting these messages that are misinformation, and I keep doing the whole community, note to people.
Notes.
Whenever I see one, I do one.
Yeah,
I,
me too. I'm
you
with
got to
you.
do it.
I'm with you on there. We got to be. And I did see I didn't see the disinformation latest thing move, but I did see Xi Jinping's response to Donald Trump applying tariffs, 10% tariffs to Chinese goods, adding on to tariffs. And he just said, "We're ready for war. We're ready for war of all kinds." He said, "A trade war or a war of any kind." I'm like, "Great." Somewhere Vladimir Putin is just giggling shirtless on a horse somewhere. I mean, he
Yeah,
is. It's unbelievable.
sad,
I mean,
sad.
if you needed, confirmation that there is some level of that going on, um, just the flip in Ukraine. I watched an interview with Stephen Colbert. Did you see this? I know you watch Colbert too. Did you see Jake Tapper on with
Yeah,
Stephen
yeah.
Colbert and him speaking about, like, I've been covering this guy now for 10 years. Like, you got to believe it when he says something. Like, he's not joking about turning Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East. Like, he's
Right.
not joking about that. And a whole group in Egypt, a group of Arab leaders got together in Egypt and said, "Yeah, no, we're not going to do that." And Donald Trump's like, "Yeah, we are. Actually, we are." And it's just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
He'll
Just
do, and
yesterday he tweeted out saying to the Hamas saying, give the prisoners back now, or we're done. We'll,
He said that a
basically,
couple of weeks ago. He said by Saturday or we're done. So
yeah,
he
he tweeted
doesn't
again last
he is
night.
now
So
known for not necessarily doing the done part of the doing.
yes, well,
So,
that's the issue. Although he is turning those tariffs on and off, but
but have they
where is he?
actually ever happened though? Like,
I don't know.
has a
I've heard people
tariff
crossing
been
the border.
paid,
I heard
right?
people crossing.
All it's doing is doing this to the markets, right? And if you're aware of when the good and bad will happen, you can buy the dip and make a freaking fortune. There are a lot of people, there are a lot of billionaires who are going to not be paying a lot of taxes because Donald Trump's given them the, and there used to be a time where the SEC would step in and be like, that's illegal. But the Doge fires those people now.
Yeah, and there's
Wild.
cryptocurrency scams going out right out of the White House office.
They're
You know,
deregulating banks next. Like, what?
I
I
already thought
mean,
they were in America. This
yeah,
is
but
too bad.
even further.
Yeah, and then apparently
Oh,
there's no American banks in Canada, by the way, just so you, yeah, right.
no, no.
So,
Oh,
but at least
God.
locally, Jody, things are normal, right? Like,
Oh, things are great.
local,
Just ask
local.
Dallas Brody.
Oh, right. What happened now?
She went on a rant on Twitter. Of course, Dallas Brody is a member of the BC Conservative Party and going after a fellow conservative, in fact, the opposition House leader. It's just, this is not a family squabble that, like, I'm looking for a response from John Rustad. And as of the time that we are recording this, absolute crickets. Like, again, denialism over residential schools and unmarked graves and that truth and reconciliation, like all of it. It was so incredibly racist. I watched it mouth agape. Like I just, what is happening?
Yeah. And it's interesting to see the challenge he has because if he goes hard after her, there's about 10 other MLAs that are closely aligned with her that he'd have to do the same thing to, which would then divide his party up. So the reason he's staying quiet is he doesn't want to ruin his party. So I don't
Right.
know what the long game is for that party, but I've already, I've heard a leadership race is coming as soon as things calm down. That
Yeah, you think
he
so?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've heard a few people that are going to be doing it who but there definitely needs to be a review of some form, and if he
Yeah.
doesn't keep speaking up, there will be dissent on his leadership. Um,
Who ends up leading that party?
well, the most likely candidate that's will be going for it is the person because he also ran for leadership of BC United was Gavin Dew. I
Right.
can say for sure he will be giving it a shot.
Yeah.
And some of the others, but that would be the most
Maybe
likely
a
one
Trevor
that I
Helford.
What's that? Yeah, Trevor, maybe. You know,
Yeah.
so it'll be interesting to see. It's interesting to see former MLA in Langley. You were saying this
Mike
before the
DeYoung.
show. Was
Yeah, I
that?
talked to him today and I mean, politics aside, I actually stole a line from you in speaking with them. It's like one need not agree with you politically or what have you, but thank you for your service because he was basically he's a 30-year plus MLA, health minister, AG, like he's BC Liberal, BC United, whatever you want to call like guy,
Finance
and he was
minister,
running in Abbotsford South
right?
Langley as a federal conservative candidate, and the leadership or the candidate race to who would become the candidate there is like this weekend, and he got an email a couple days ago saying, thanks for coming, but no, you're not approved after a year of fundraising and volunteers and da da da. Just like
And
no
what did he
no
say was the
explanation.
reason? This is Mike DeYoung for those who might have missed at the beginning. What did he say? You
He
said you
he said there
interviewed?
was literally no reason given, and he goes breaking news right now because I just received because he challenged it because you can challenge such things, and he said he got an email that was like, we have reconsidered your challenge and our
Oh
initial
no.
situation. He's like, I have no idea. He read off the email live, and it doesn't say because you have done something inappropriate or if you've done something wrong, if you've done something you painted outside of the lines, you broke a rule. There was nothing.
Yeah, from our point of view, he ticks a lot of boxes for the federal conservatives. So very strange.
Very.
And they can't argue that because he's has been. I mean, he's not that old. I think he's about the same age as me. And so, I mean,
Us.
I don't know. That's very strange. So I wonder if what the other candidates, who they are, and parties decide on who the people are based on a bunch of other reasons, and sometimes they don't want to
But
race.
don't you at least let the people run and decide? Like, do you?
No,
No.
it's
Okay.
better to
I'm
use
that
this
naive.
in a political party. It's better to usurp the rules, like on having a democracy within a political party, in order to get a candidate you want, especially if there's nut bars. And I'm not saying Mike's a nut bar. By far, he's not. He's a great, funny guy, actually. He's quite fun to hang out with, and I've met him many times.
Yeah.
But there must be some other reason, and I'm guessing they have a chosen candidate that they would prefer, whoever that is.
I wonder.
And they
But why not
didn't,
just say
Mike didn't
that
fit
then?
because then it looks like they are being undemocratic. You don't say it, Jody. You just do it.
Right.
That's party
That's
politics,
why
though. So people
people
get
hate
confused about
politics
party
so much.
politics and democracy. It's party politics don't have to be democratic internally. That's
Right.
democracy is where we as people get to vote. In the interest of the Liberal Party federally, I mean, anybody could join. They have I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of members now. So basically, there's a mini election right now happening for the leader of the federal Liberals because
That's
their
right.
process is very democratic.
Yeah. It's just fascinating. Anyways, thank you for bending my brain. Sorry for being like spent, but this
Yes.
last 4 days of news, it's bending my brain.
Especially Mike's show, which is such a good show on NW because the listeners are so active, and so it's having hosted that show, it's always the best show
It's
because
fun.
of the listeners are so good, and so they call in, but it's also like intense because there's so many people wanting to talk to you, um, and it's the show. It's like the number one. Like I think this is the show that's got all the top guests for the day. This is the out of the gate
This
in
is
the
when the
morning.
news happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've been drinking, like you said off the top, we've been drinking from the fire hose of news of late.
Yeah.
And this week, I've just, yeah, it's
You
been
need,
the
you need a
fastest
nap.
pace.
Time for a
We're
nap.
just ripping things up. I don't get time to nap. I got to do it all again tomorrow. Oh, guess what I'm doing tomorrow night? I haven't even had a chance to tell you this. I'm the guest PA announcer at the Vancouver Canucks game.
Whoa. No.
Yeah, yeah.
What?
Last minute of play. I'm
That's
practicing.
super cool.
Isn't that neat? Yeah, it's
Wow.
International Women's Day on Friday. Thank a woman around you. International Women's Day, and they invited me to do the PA announcements with Al Murdoch, of course. But Christine Sinclair is going to be there, Cami Granado, a bunch of it's going to be a celebration of women in sport. So I'm very honored to be a part of that. And on that note, I'll throw you a heart across the bow and remind people to follow you on social media because you have mentioned your tweets today a number of times. So you are at
Underscore.
George_Affleck. George_Affleck on your Twitter. And elsewhere, you're just George Affleck. But there you go. I'm at Jody Vance on all of my social media. So like and subscribe. Tell your friends about UnSpun podcast. We do our best to unpack what's happening. Today was all over the place because you know what? That's what the news cycle is.
We are. That's where we are in the world.
We are. We're standing strong together, and we're gonna keep going, George. We're gonna keep going until a slow news day hits. How many are we into? 7 seasons of this
200,
now.
281, I don't even know. Almost 300, let's say. Longest running political podcast in BC history.
We're survivors, George Affleck. Cheers.
Cheers.